Those sausage fingers, right? There we go.
Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the
Long
airwaves,
call
is
PM.
ready to go. Talking to people you
If you're going to play
face to face, one-on-one.
the second time
Get the story
Don't.
and have some fun with
on
Rhett
the
Palmer.
And now, the
We're
most
so
trusted name
lucky to
in
have
radio, Rhett Palmer,
Be grateful.
the mayor of the airwaves.
Hey, how about some of that applause you have stored? Do I have it on here or do you have it? Is it the blue thing?
Nice.
That's not very long.
That should be applause for Noah. He does such a great job here.
Look at these guys are taking over. What about me? I've been doing this
Brett,
29 years.
we all
He's
love
only
you.
been here 7 years. Okay.
be grateful.
Welcome back.
You know that
Hey,
lesson.
you're hearing the voice of Jim Feeney, Fini. He's a broadcaster himself, has a podcast, has a blog. Jim Feeney, Fini.
Yes, and really enjoy my time here on Wednesday with David Hunter.
David
Talk
Hunter,
about-
former U.S. diplomat to the United States, 5 different nations.
Nice to be here, I think.
Yeah, and we also have you been a guest on his blog yet?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
David's been on my show.
Okay. So,
So I have a
and then
question
we
to
have,
ask.
we have
Jad.
let me introduce him.
Oh, good.
It's Jad Shaloub,
That's right.
and he's originally from, his parents are from Lebanon. And you've spent a lot of time over there with family members, but you were born here in the U.S. And he's running for a school district here in Indian River County.
Hospital
so
district.
Hospital, what did I say?
School.
Oh, sorry about that. Anyway, well, maybe you can school them guys. How's that? Okay, Jim Feeney's
So
got a question.
I got a question for. Actually, I have 2 questions. The first one is like, could you relate to Tony Shalhoub?
Distant cousin, actually.
No,
yeah.
look at that,
Yeah,
Tony Shalhoub,
yeah.
monk, great
That's-
actor.
Yeah.
But the second question is, so we've been talking about Israel and how what does a 2-state solution look like, and David's got his perspective, and we're really trying hard to get something that at least we think would be workable, and we'll see where fate takes things. But being a Lebanese American and being intimately involved, in following the politics there and having experience in your family with that, how do you look at this? How do you look at like the Hezbollah, issue? Because they are a militarized political wing, separate and apart from the Lebanese government, although part of it. What does your family think, and what the community you run, and what do they look at in terms of Hezbollah and how they should be there?
Right. So I have had multiple discussions with my family. It's been, obviously a big topic over the years. And so my parents, having been, actually, they left Lebanon due to civil war. That's why they came to the United States. And so they've seen this play out pretty much their entire lifetime. And so my brother now, he actually has his own podcast. He's living in Los Angeles, and he's very pro-Palestinian position.
Really?
Yes. And
Why?
so
He's going to tell you.
So, I think because
You are from your mom was Muslim and your dad was Christian.
yeah, so my mom converted to marry my dad. So
Did
there's
she really convert or just do it technically?
We'll convert, whatever that means.
Hey, I'm asking a question
But
here.
I want him to
Don't
get
you subjugate the big king here, No mayor no more. I'm the king
All right,
now.
that's
I
right.
can't speak to the heart of my mom in that decision.
I should talk to her.
Yeah, but
Did she have a good time when she was down here to be on my show?
she did. Yeah,
Okay,
she
good.
greatly enjoyed that.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
but anyway, to kind of sum it
Classy
up,
lady,
very much.
as is your dad. Go ahead.
Appreciate it. There are differing opinions even within Lebanon regarding the issue. The Christian perspective, generally speaking, is that we want to leave Israel alone, maintain our peace. I would say the people who sympathize with Hezbollah are obviously backing them in what they're doing. But it's frustrating to the rest of people who don't want to poke the bear, so to speak, and just want to maintain the land that's there, like I mentioned earlier.
Right, Sheba Valley.
Yeah.
Poke the bear.
Well, Shiba's gone. Shiba's
right.
under Israeli. They've annexed it, like Dave said. But even what's
Should
left,
Hezbollah be shelling Israel, like just launching rockets?
I don't think
into
so. I don't think so. I don't think that's called for. I do think, like, I've seen it firsthand. Hezbollah. So they capitalize. This is my view. again, a first, what's it called? A primary source.
Yep.
As someone who's been there and who has seen the mosques and the camps, there's, first of all, a lot of refugees who have come now, not only from Palestine, but from Syria, and they live in tents. And I visited these tents.
You did.
And they don't have access to education. That basic resources are very slim. So what Hezbollah does is they'll go around in buses, they'll pick up the kids, and they'll take them to the mosque. And in the mosque, they learn how to be, a good Shia Muslim, and also they learn about Hezbollah, and they learn, and I'm being honest, they learn death to Israel and death to America. That's what they teach them from a very young age. And so I think that's wrong. But at the same token, I also think that it's not past the imagination of anyone to think that there's also bad actors or bad policy on the Israeli side either. And that's really, I think,
We're the Christians. Why don't we have churches over there and have the buses pick the kids up and take them to Christians?
I was actually there on mission, and we were interacting with those communities and sharing the gospel with them. So that's why we were there.
That's what's happened in our schools.
Yeah.
All the professors teaching the left side. I don't know what it is.
Well,
Or
you know,
who's behind that financially.
I mentioned that before, that Lebanon, along with Jordan, is a huge reservoir of Palestinian refugees.
Right.
Lebanon has been carrying on its back, and therefore its economy has been suffering by supporting all these refugees.
Right.
It's very generous of the Lebanese to take in these people. You notice the Saudis don't take in anybody. They don't take in a single person. And they have lots of billions of dollars. And poor Lebanon is literally struggling to keep its
They
head
have
above
gold,
water.
solid gold toilets in their private jets.
So there's a real hypocrisy
Truth.
in this so-called "we support Palestine," but in reality, they're not supporting them by providing them with assistance or anything like that. Jim mentioned this idea of these the Americans apparently funding through U.S. government funds some sort of rewards for the Shaheed, the people who commit suicide bombings in Israel. In reality, the Saudi Arabians also are funding Shahidis.
Lots of them.
Lots of them.
But
They've
some
been doing
of our
it for
taxpayer
years.
dollars go to it as well. That's the
and,
point. So it's policy. That's a policy. That can be stopped with a new president, and I hope that he does that if Trump is elected.
Right.
But I diverged. So anyway, we're kind of at this. I don't know what's an impasse or not. In the prior segment, we got to basically David's objections of you cannot have Netanyahu in power. You can't have these 750,000 settlers in the West Bank. Remove those. In exchange, Hamas is gone. So that is a two-state solution beginning. But we talked about this right of return and what that means. That 8 million or so.
No, it's 4 million.
Whatever, 4 million. A significant number that would change the character and nature overnight of Israel. That they be allowed to return to Israel proper, not the West Bank or Gaza. If we could agree that these people get to return to the West Bank in Gaza, no problem. That is the new Palestinian state. It's going to be
as a
dense.
sovereign. Now, this is where we're talking about how could you reach a two-state solution.
Yeah.
Now, the point is, returning to Palestine, meaning the West Bank and Gaza, as a sovereign entity with its own airports, its own territorial borders, and its own internal security, as opposed to having Israel being the big dog overseeing who comes and goes and enters. Keep in mind the Gaza today, even though it was, quote, turned over to the Palestinians, it has been an Israeli prison camp for all practical purposes. The border has been controlled.
But
Even
all
water
that-
access,
but-
that'll all have to go. All
Of
that
course,
has to
of
go.
course.
It has to be a real free state.
A real free state. I stipulate all of that.
Yeah. Now
the only thing that I'm going to dig my heels in on the Zionist side is say, no, the right to return does not go to Israeli proper. You have a right to return to Gaza.
Okay, so that's
and the
one.
PLO.
That's one point where
And
we've got a possible compromise
West Bank.
from a very strong pro-Israeli perspective. Now, another problem, because there are lots of problems, and this is one that is also equally as complicated as the right to return, probably more so, and that is the status of East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is attached to the West Bank. Now, over the last 15 or 20 years, the Israelis have been claiming East Jerusalem is part of West Jerusalem. There's nothing divided in Jerusalem. It's all one country. This is why the moving of the embassy by Donald Trump to Jerusalem was so controversial and is controversial.
All right, I know where you're going with this, so let me say this about that. East Jerusalem's always has been an international and an interreligious city for sweeping over centuries and millennia. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and so we stipulate that. The Dome of the Rock is there, just as Solomon's Temple is there.
In East Jerusalem.
We have during the Cold War that I grew up in, we had two warring factions, and Berlin was cut down the middle for that very reason. And East Jerusalem, we could take whatever the negotiated border is and say, okay, that's part of your Palestinian state. Its capital is in East Jerusalem. There is a wall there. There's a checkpoint, new checkpoint, Charlie. That's the way it's going to be because this is yours and this is ours. Would that satisfy?
That would be an
I don't think
improvement.
that'll ever happen.
Well,
I don't think it will, but I'm
okay.
saying if we were king for a day.
Yeah, excuse me, but these are what I call negotiating points that
yes,
have to be
and-
resolved.
and-
because
and-
right now, the wall that Israel has built is 20 miles inside the West Bank. They have moved East Jerusalem. They have built 20 miles inside the West Bank and said all of that is now East Jerusalem, and they are moving settlers into that so-called East Jerusalem.
You don't have to belabor.
That has to be removed.
You're belaboring that point. We're at the point where what does that split look like? Whatever the split is in Jerusalem, so that they have their capital and the
So
Israelis
67
have their
borders,
capital.
yeah.
It has to be enforced by. It's got to be a UN no-fly zone. And the United Nations can control it. It's just going to be a permanent resident right there. You're going to have 1,000 UN troops with the blue helmets on that wall. They do the checkpoint, Charlie, and they ensure, hopefully, the peace. Have the UN actually do something useful for a change.
Yeah.
That would be something useful.
And
Does that sound like a doable solution?
I'm actually
I'm
impressed.
just trying to get to this guy to say yes.
I'm impressed that Jim is actually suggesting the UN can do something useful.
Yeah.
Because normally, if you were
Most
a
I'm
true,
surprised
if you were,
that he
if you
could
were
be
a,
so
if you were a true Zionist,
naive.
if you were a true Zionist like Ben Gvir and Smotrich, you think the United Nations is an anti-Semitic conspiracy, and you want the United Nations abolished, and you want the World Court, the so-called International Court of Justice, to be abolished. You think that they are irrelevant and that they don't apply to Israel. That's what you think as a
I don't
far-right
think this
extremist.
because I have no idea what
I'm
you're
a
talking
far.
about.
So are you saying I'm a far right extremist?
I'm saying you're not because you actually want the UN to do something.
Yes, the UN has a role. While I still agree with the International Court of Justice and all these global institutions,
You agree.
they're highly politicized.
Oh.
They don't represent U.S. interests, which are world interests, democratic ideals for the most part. However, they're not completely useless. International Monetary Fund, but they do need to change the nature of their spots. But I will say this: the UN can police that border, and it's real military, so, and you have to come up with a statement that says this new West Bank or Palestinian state removes any allusion to the destruction of Israel from its charter and its parties. It will not tolerate terrorism. Israel's security has to be guaranteed because the last thing you want is now you get 8 million and all of a sudden it all starts again because we now have oil money. We're our own state. We're just going to go to war with the state next to us. But now we have real guns because that is a real possibility that I see.
All right, Jim mentioned that last week, and I want to just clarify it, that the idea that the oil money might come from the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip has offshore oil, offshore gas. Trillion cubic feet of gas have been discovered just offshore of that. So that could become a very wealthy source of income for the Palestinians in the new state. It would be and Jim's saying, well, yeah, and they might use that to buy a bunch of arms, and then they would attack Israel.
That's
But I don't think
Iran. That's what Iran does.
Yeah, but I don't think when you're living right next door to somebody and you're well fed and you're well treated and you have freedom, and that's the problem. See, the Israelis have not granted the Palestinians freedoms. The Israelis are treating the Palestinians like an occupied area. They have these checkpoints. They are not free to cross over, even in
Yes.
East Jerusalem. They're not
We know
free
this.
to move
We
around.
know this, but it's
so
been
that
a
has
war,
to be removed.
But it's been a war zone for 70 years, David.
That's-
and
I know.
And,
So-
and Israeli people, they expect security. So
Yeah.
I for you to say, oh, they've been look at Israel. They're not occupying for no reason. They've been attacked for their entire history by groups of people that want to eradicate them from the planet, much less the Holy Land. So. That's okay that they did that.
Okay, I
What-
disagree with that.
If we're
I
gonna,
dis-
well, I know you do.
I
You're-
disagree with
we
that.
come
I think
from,
that's, if you sit there there were lots of Palestinians and Jews living together peacefully without trying to eradicate each other until the Jews decided they wanted to come back to the Holy Land and take it over for themselves as God-given land, waving the Torah in front of everybody and saying, get off this land is my land and not yours. That's what caused this.
Yeah.
And then when the Palestinians fought back, you suddenly say, oh, they're terrorists because they don't agree with you and the Torah. That's the problem with Zionism. That's the concept of Zionism.
Yes.
It
Well,
has a
okay. So if we're gonna deviate from the two-state solution, and talk about the essence of what Zionism is or isn't, and what anti-Zionism is or isn't, then for sure the historical record of the eradication, mechanized eradication of Jews in the Holocaust is an indisputable fact in the historical record. They were marbled into society on a secular basis, contributing members of Germany, Hungary, Poland, I mean, all over the place in Europe. Diaspora, not in Jerusalem. I speak German. I am a German. And yet, the most unspeakable tragedy happened. So we know that's possible. To say that and rule that out or rule that kind of animus that would drive conflict, even after a two-state solution, and say, well, that can never happen anymore, is unrealistic. All right? So, how do you guarantee in a two-state solution that the Israeli, whatever is left of Israel, is secure? That you don't have these radical madrasas, as Jad was talking about, teaching kids death to Israel, death to America. That has to be illegal. You can't do that, right?
Yeah, and part of the two-state solution obviously would be recognition of each state of the other. And
Yeah,
that
But
means
the Muslims to believe the Christians and the Jews are infidels and they should be killed or made slaves.
We're trying to leapfrog over that.
yeah. Well, so
Well, you
so
can
That's
dream-
medieval
you-
thinking.
You can dream on.
yeah,
Well,
they-
it's medieval. The problem is you have one party, the Palestinian side, and their Arab sponsors are still in the 12th century AD. They are living by a Sharia law in one form or of another. They still believe in
let
concepts that
me-
will never allow peace.
Let me ask this. So if Genghis Khan had been the head of Israel when it became a country a few years ago, in 48, was it 48?
Oh my God, they would
No,
have
Genghis Khan would
invaded Saudi Arabia.
He would have. They would have invaded all the enemies, and now it would just be Jews living there.
Or
What-
no,
do you,
whatever.
if you're a doctor, do you go in? Ask your dad. Do you go in and just remove half of the cancer? You know,
Depends on what you're defining as cancer, though, because
Hamas.
Well, there's Hamas, but then there's Palestinian people that
That's right.
have a
They
right to-
equally hate the Jews.
And it's similar to Hezbollah, which is a lot of Hezbollah. Keep in mind, they're in the government. They're members of the cabinet.
In this world,
they
might
live-
is right, right?
When you say, oh, these people are they want to kill everybody except for extremist Muslims. No, Hezbollah is not an extremist Muslim organization. Hezbollah is a Shiite organization, but it is a member of parliament. It plays with Christians. It plays with all of the other categories, the Druze. It is not out there saying
bless you.
only the Shiite Muslims should rule Lebanon. They're not saying that. They're willing to live with the rest of the people.
Could we in exchange could we take say a couple of million Israeli Jews and just say, hey, you now have a right to live in Lebanon, because you used to at a particular point, right? There was a community, small community there. It's like, yeah, you get a right to return there, right? You get a right to the right to return. Do the Holocaust survivors have a right to return? They have the keys to their house in Germany, pre-World War II. No, that's gone. Those are the spoils of wars of determination, and I made this point in my blog. A war of determination, and it's human history. I don't create this. We don't want them, but they occur because you get to a sticking point and say, you know what, we're not going to get any. I'm going to just slaughter you all, and that it'll be decided that way. I wish that never happened or it doesn't happen in the future, but it will.
Okay, we are about out of time for today. Is there anybody that wants to each get a 2-minute final statement
He
here?
should go first.
Okay, Jad, you are running for not school board, for hospital district.
Yes.
this fall. You have no contest at this
Thus far.
point.
Yeah, and I'm glad I was able to join you guys. I think one thought that crosses my mind is that if you all are not able to come to resolution in this room, how much more difficult is it for Israel and
Yes.
Palestine
Absolutely.
to
Great point.
find a resolution?
That's why it's important for us to find one, at least have
And
something in theory.
I think the key is just a little bit of listening to each other, and there's always truth on either side. I know that's kind of very cliche, but especially with this point, when we talk about history, I think a lot of people write off the Bible as just a religious text, but not a historical document. But I believe that the account of the Bible is historical.
Especially
And-
the Old Testament.
Right, and it talks about the formation of the nation of Israel, and this is a kingdom. There is archaeological evidence of the ancient kingdom of
Sure.
Israel. They were once there, and so oftentimes when people talk about this conflict, they talk about from 1947 on. They
Right.
don't realize it does go further back, and it also talks about Israel fighting with David and Goliath, Israeli, Palestinian.
Okay,
Yeah,
but,
Philistines
but
lived in
who was
Gaza.
there first? Was it Israel or
They
was
were
it
all
Well,
Canaanites.
actually, the Philistines and all the factions of people
That's what you said.
that but God actually has those people driven out, because at the time God had judgment stored for these nations, but these nations were doing horrible things. They were sacrificing their own children. They were participating.
Well, later on, Israel did that too with Baal. They would put the babies on the arms of this
Right.
thing. They would heat up with fire.
And so
They've all
anyway,
been guilty of murder.
I think what's important today, and
Terrible.
the New Testament era, as a believer, I'll speak from that perspective.
Yes.
Is Jesus? He was prophesied as the Prince of Peace. And if he were here, it says in the Beatitudes, it says, "Blessed is the peacemaker," right? So we need to be there. We need to realize.
So
that,
even though we think some things are inevitable, we leave that up to God. We should still work towards peace.
peace,
Always.
Blessed
And
are the peace.
That's
Even,
self-preservation.
even the Bible says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for I shall bless them that
Yep.
bless thee."
yes. And so there certainly is significance of the relationship between God and the people of Israel, but God is also a fair and righteous judge. And so if they are stepping out of line, if their leadership is stepping out of line, that's going to lead to problems for them. Same thing with the Palestinians. So there's no favorites.
God is
Everyone-
God of all.
Right. He'll repay everyone for their deeds. So I would just say this. I think in this situation, it's important to realize that both sides, and my parents would probably agree with the same thing, because they've seen it. They've seen it's tit for tat, just like David said. They'll do something wrong, then
Okay.
this person does something wrong. But anyway,
Okay.
peace.
Thank you, peace. You're
That's
for
it.
peace.
Shalom.
I'm going to read a little something that I wrote, and I want you to chew on this, and we don't have to answer today. This is what I wrote. I wrote. Remember, I brought up the gold toilet on the aircraft. So I said, sitting on a solid gold toilet, what is it like to get up from a gold toilet? Your excrement stinks like every other human's, from prince to pauper. Do you have a conscience? Do you think you are privileged to have a gold toilet? Well, yes, actually, you are, I guess. I see no value, zero value in such a ridiculous thing as a gold toilet, but there is someone who is unhappy and considering suicide this day and just got off a fancy toilet of some sort. There's also a poor person getting up off a simple toilet who has joy and laughter in their lives. Who is in fact richer? I don't know why this is. I don't know. It's because I've been in houses that I've been in some mansions, and I've been with billionaires, and I have to say, I've been in places where I go, I can't wait to get out of this house. I don't find it pleasant. I find little homes where people love each other. So I don't know. I don't know. Does anybody ever think of these things? What would it be like? I'm on my jet right now, and I get up from my gold toilet. So do I think I'm better somehow or something? I'm going to die just like you are. It's more fun to be down there talking to the man who's selling candies at the airport and having a good life and a time. I don't understand how we are deceived into thinking that more is somehow more stuff. Is
Okay,
it because I'm a 70-year-old or
All right. You
know?
wanted to have the three of us give
Okay.
our final.
Yeah, you've got.
comments.
We
David,
have.
go
We have. Okay,
ahead,
we have
Jim.
4 minutes left. Two for
Yeah.
you. Two for you.
I think it's a worthwhile venture to have an intellectual, fact-based discussion objectively of what a two-state solution looks like. in Israel. Like, I'm hoping this is a threshold moment. If there is a ceasefire and the hostages do get released, something's going to happen here because, and it has to, because if it doesn't, to our earlier point about Hezbollah in Iran, it really has the average person listener may say, that doesn't affect us. I hear that a lot, especially from, the hardcore Trump supporters. Why are we there? We're there because our direct national interests are there, and they always have been there. And we know history teaches us when the United States becomes more inward looking and says, we don't, no foreign entanglements like some of the founders, right? Then the world becomes a darker place. Mordor encroaches.
Okay.
It's just the position we find ourselves in.
Okay, now you.
Okay, I said at the beginning that there are many different factions within Israel, and I support Israel as a right to exist. That does not make me a Zionist in the way that the far right, like Ben Gvir, are talking about.
You mean Jews and Muslims together?
I think that the important distinction that we need to make
That's
is
a
this,
question, by the way. I'm not
this
saying who
far right extremist groups like Ben Gvir. They are essentially advocating for a complete removal of all non-Jews from the river to the sea. That's what they want. They want to take over Gaza. They want to take over the West Bank. And
Who is this?
The Jews that are far right extremists like Ben Gvir
And the other
his
side
crowd.
wants to remove the
But
Jews
there's going to be
completely.
a new election in Israel some point in the.
Wait,
the
you gave
Oh,
me
he
2
gets to
minutes.
talk.
Let me finish.
Okay, I'll go.
Netanyahu and the
No,
coalition
no,
he's
he's got
talking
his time.
about
His
are
time.
going to get
Jim,
marginalized.
let me
No.
mention some of these far right people don't understand. There's something called the Khanists, and this is from the
Meir Kahan.
Meir Kahan. And the Khanists are actually a political party that was designated as an Israeli terror group. Inside, Baruch Goldstein was a member of the
Sure.
Khanists. Okay, the Khanists advocate for the elimination, literally the elimination, extermination of all the Jews. I mean, of all the non-Jews.
Just like Hamas. They're no better than
They're
Hamas.
just like Hamas. But Ben Gvir is a member of the Khan
So
movement.
Baruch Goldstein's the guy that went and shot
He's the
up
one that
people.
shot, and he's a member of the
He shot
Khanists.
up other fellow Jews.
It's
Yes,
a political
he's a
movement. So
member-
you want to outlaw that as a political movement?
Well, and you know what happened in the last year? In 2022, Biden administration removed the Khanist party from the U.S. terror list. Removed them. Took them off. Okay? So now they are no longer considered terrorists. Now,
What are they considered?
they're considered to be just ordinary.
Okay, we
and-
got 30 seconds. What do you
yeah,
want to
and
say?
Well, I want to mention that one of the Khanists, a famous Khanist, his name is Benny Goldstein, Gopstein, he actually publicly advocated burning Christian churches, banning Christmas, and expelling Christians from Palestine, Israel, expelling them. These people are so extreme, it's not that they're just anti-Muslim. They're anti-Christian. They don't want them. They spit on the Muslims. They spit on the Christians.
I saw that picture recently where they were coming out. These little Jewish kids are spitting on Christians.
Yeah,
it's not good.
exactly.
Okay.
So that's extremism. That's extremism. I don't
On
want
both
that.
sides, don't like it. Okay, we got to give up the studio
Yeah.
to our next recipient here.
Okay.
I'm Rhett Palmer. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you. Remember, Jesus is Lord.